Now we will try to implement the Kafka programmatically, and to do that we are basically going to implement with the help of Java, right? So as part of our dependency file, you can see that the dependency specifically we are using to communicate with the Kafka, that is called Kafka-client. Okay, you can go directly to the Maven repository and look for this specific dependency as well. Now, as to just speed up this process, I already have created two specific packages where we will try to write couple of classes. So one is like handler and one is helper. But before getting to the actual code, we also need certain configurations to be done, and those configuration has to be placed into the some property file. Okay. So if I do that, if I open this file, then you can see that there are a couple of properties that I have already mentioned. So the first one is the location of the Kafka server. So if you remember, like we need a specific location to be provided where Kafka server can be started, right? And we are defining that localhost 9092 because currently we are running on the localhost. Second thing, there is a group ID that we need to provide. As we see that group is a default thing if we are not providing. So one group that we are defining, that is called test-group. The third thing is like make Kafka keep track of record released by the consumer. So whenever the producer producer messages and one consumer is subscribed to some topic, so like consumers are keep on reading out those messages, right? So that is called like commits. So we need to enable one of the property called commit. If we mark as true, then what Kafka will do is Kafka will keep the track of the messages whatever the consumer is reading out, and these are the specific classes as part of the serializing and deserializing messages we need to just enable it. Okay, so you can just have a look, and those are like both of the classes as the part of serializer and deserializer, right? So as we mentioned previously that Kafka is basically whatever the messages are being produced by the producer, those messages are being stored in the form of key and value pair. That's the reason we need to serialize key and value both, and we need to deserialize key and value both. So folks, this value always going to be the common for your case also. So that's the reason you just can have a check, and you can just grab the same value for your implementation as well. Lastly, auto offset reset equal to earlier. So if you remember that we discussed about the offset values, right? So offset are basically providing us the flexibility so that we can track or we can get a specific message out of the log or the whatever the local or whatever the memory log that messages are being stored. So there is couple of value. So we have mentioned like earliest. Earliest means whatever the message are being logged into the memory log, the newest, the earliest message, we need to read that, we need to fetch that. Okay, or we need to consume that. That's the reason it is like mentioned as like earliest. All right, so our property file is done. So now what we can do is we can create one property handler so that we can access this. So here we will simply create one class and we will name it like property helper. Okay, so property helper going to be our class. So first of all, what we will be doing is like we will be creating one public static method, and this method going to return the properties, and we will name it is like get properties. Okay, get properties going to be our method name. And at the very first line of this, we will try to define one object or the reference variable, but initially we will not assign any value to it. We will make it as null. Then we will start some exception handling, that is in the try catch block. And after doing this, after try catch block, we will try to catch any IO exception which can be which can be there probably, and if that is something happened, we will simply try to uh, print on the console. Now as part of the try, we will take the help of input stream. Okay, we try to help of input stream with the object we can create as in like input, and after that we will try to provide the path of our config.properties, right? So in the handler, we can create one class that is maybe producer, right? Why I'm creating this class now? Because with the help of this class reference only, we will say that our config.properties is present, right? So that's the reason I can say that producer dot class dot get class loader, dot get resource at stream, and here we can provide one name as like config dot properties. Okay, so this is done. So we are basically taking the config.property file reference with the help of producer class, because this is the something the same, the parent folder is same. Okay, and we are trying to access the resource folder of this. After line number this, the line number 15, on the next line, what we can do is we can actually assign the property value. So we can say that prop equal to new properties. Prop equal to new properties. That is done. Okay, now one check we will provide that if my prop is null, so what I can do is then we can say that throw one exception. Sorry, my bad, it should be like input. So basically what I'm trying to do is, like, if my this line going to get me the value as null, that means property file is not been available or something, then what I can do is I can simply try to throw a new exception, and we can say that unable to read config dot properties, and else, so we need to just add a, so as it is throwing the exception, so we can say that throws exception. Okay, and if the input file is present, that means there is no such exception occurred, then we can simply say that proc dot load, and it should be like input, right? And once all the things has been done, we can simply return to proc. Make sense? So property helper basically one exposing one specific method, static and public static method, and this method responsibility to check if the property is present. If the property is present, whatever the components or value, the key value pair we mentioned, this instance of the property, it will going to provide to us, and from wherever we require, we can directly call out that. Okay. So after that, we need to implement our producer. So before implementing the producer code base, probably we can also create consumer class, because going forward we may require it, right? And that's it. For the time being, we will only deal these three files. And finally, whatever the like main method code we are trying to do, that is something we will try to execute from the application class. So now it is the time for the producer class implement. Okay, now this is the time to implement this consumer. So while implementing the consumer code base, what we will do is we will create a logger so that we can log our specific step informations and all those things. So logger factory dot get logger, and our class name is dot class. Okay, so quickly import this, right? So this is done. So once this is done, what we can do is we can create one method called public void method called produce messages. Okay, produces messages is one of the method that we have created, and this method responsibility to produce the messages. So to just to be more clarity, what we will do is we'll also try to comment our steps, that what exactly the steps we are following here. So this step number one, what is the purpose of it? So here we will create a producer and connect to the cluster, connect to the cluster. So this is something we will do. And also the subset of it is like we will try to get the connection. We will try to get the connection data from config dot properties file. Basically, whatever the configuration we made as part of the configured property, those information we may require to create the producer. Makes sense? So to access the property file, what we can do is we can create one instance of the properties file. So I can say that properties equal to property helper dot get properties. So it's going to throw some exception because we already mentioned that over there. And now the major part, we have something called Kafka producer, and this is actually taking the value as key and value pair. Sorry, my bad. So it should be like string, and I can say the name can be like Kafka producer, and this should be initialized as this. So here it's basically asking for some parameter, and the parameter should be the properties. So basically through this, right? So this is a class which is basically implemented. So if you get into this, you can see that Kafka producer basically a class which implementing one interface called producer, and this class is like actually having a key and value pair that we need to provide. Okay, and this is also having a specific, you see that Kafka producer, and it is asking for some property, right? It is asking for some property. So that's the reason we need to pass the property instance with it, so that whatever the configuration we made as part of the configured property file, that can be passed through this while creating the producer, Kafka producer. Make sense? Now the next step, what we're gonna do is we will create a topic. You need to create a topic. So for this case, topic can be like topic name. What can be my topic name? So my topic name can be like a same topic name we can use like cap details. This is my topic name. Now the next step is step number 3, that we need to create the message, right? Because producer created, topic also created. Now producer need to produce certain messages. For the time being, we are basically hard coding all the messages, and to do that we gonna use, so we can see that create messages. Okay, the step. And now we will take the help of JSON object, and we will name it as like messages, and equal to new JSON object. We will initialize that. Now messages dot put, because JSON object also like it is basically use the key value combo. So first message we can say that cab, or only the speed. Okay, so speed is like 25 km per hour. Okay, now I will simply copy this line so that I can create couple of more messages. So second can be like driver name we can provide something like Robert. Third is like location, so this location can be Karnataka. Then it is like something called fare we can say 120 piece, something like this. And and probably we can also say that cab type. So the cab type can be like sedan. Relatable, right? Makes sense. So we have already created our messages. Now step number 4, What could be my step number 4? Now we need to package the message in the record. So folks, so far we have created the producer instance, we have created a topic instance, we have already created what exactly the message we are trying to produce to the producer. Now whatever the messages we have created, we need to package it. Okay. And so that ultimately we send the specific messages via Kafka cluster. So to do that, so I can say that package the messages in the record. Okay. So to do that, we need to use producer record. Okay. We need to use producer record. Again, it is taking two things. Key should be string, value should be again string, and the name, object name, we can say like record, and this time we can simply pass equal to new producer record, and this producer record is actually contain three properties, three or two properties, okay. So at least two properties we need to pass. So here we need to pass is like one to our topic, because otherwise how producer would know that through which topic the message has to be recorded or the message has to be sent. And second thing is like messages, we will pass this message in the form of JSON string. Okay. So messages we already recorded. Now the final step is there. That is like we need to finally send the message. Okay, we need to finally send the message to the Kafka cluster. So step number 5 can be send the record. I would say for more understanding, send the record to cluster. Send the records to cluster. So to do that, we have already created the Kafka producer object here. So Kafka producer dot send, Kafka producer dot send, and here folks we will actually use one approach, that is like we will use the callback functions, because why we should use that, because if we use that then it would be easier to handle the errors. Okay, so to do that we need to define this specific send method like this. We need to pass record, and we also would like to call a new callback like this. So basically it is providing that one specific interface that if is going to be completed. So what exactly our purpose that we are trying to do? Our purpose is like if our exception, so if you can see this on completion method is actually providing two things. One is like record metadata, one is like exception. That means if my action, the action is like send, if this is completed, that means my send, whatever I wanted to do, that is like I wanted to send the specific message into the Kafka cluster, that is succeeded. If not, then exception will occur. So we can simply, very simple way, handling is happen here only. So very simple way we can check that if our exception instance is itself null, that means what, my message is successful, my message sending is successful. And if it is not, then we will simply print the error exception or whatever it is on the console. Okay, so that's the reason we will put a check that if e is nothing but our exception, equal to null, then we will say that we will take the help of logger this time, and we will say that sent successfully, sent successfully. Okay, that means our message has been sent successfully, and what exactly the message we have sent, that is something we need to know, or we need to print over the console. So we can say that whatever the messages we have in the format of JSON string we would like to see. And if error or exception happened, then we will try to do the paint stack trace, and probably we can also put it as a part of error message here. over the console, just for better um, like uh, better log or maintaining the log, right? So once it is done, folks, our producer already created the messages, recorded, and it is finally packaged and sent via this Kafka producer.send method. And what we can do is we can just put some weight here. So the weight can be like 1000 milliseconds. So just one notable thing over here, that in production we just may need to try to avoid this kind of thread or slip, but as this is something that we are using right now in our local instance, and just to avoid that local instance having couple of boundations in terms of memory and the speed. So just to handle that, just to handle the delay in between the producer emitting the message and consumer consume that, we are using it. Okay. And finally, we can say that Kafka producer dot flush and Kafka producer dot close. So basically, we are saying that our all the things happened here, all the things, if anything like either exception or successfully sent happened properly. Finally, we're gonna wait for some time, 1 millisecond, 1000 milliseconds, and after that, we will simply try to close the Kafka producer instance, whatever we have created. Okay, so this is our consumer that we just created here, right? Next, what we will do is, uh, okay, all right. Okay, so folks, I just made one small mistake. I haven't seen it before, but after writing the code, I have seen that my file name was different. So I have actually written the producer code into the consumer file. So please don't get confused. I already renamed it. That is already fixed. So basically, we have implemented the producer so far. Okay, and now we are going to implement the consumer. Okay, so just rectify that if you have already have seen. So whatever the code we have previously written, that is for producer, and now we are going to implement the code for the consumer. So as part of the consumer, again the same thing, we will try to initiate a logger. So here we can say that logger dot get log factory. So it should be like logger factory dot, let me just take it from the previous instance because this is common. So here we will simply change it to consumer. The logger is there. Okay, fine. And now we will simply create one more method over here. So public void, and we will say that consume messages. Okay, so consume message is going to be one method, and this method going to help us to consume the messages. Similar approach again we will follow. Here also we will try to document the step. So first step going to be like create the consumer and connect to the cluster. Makes sense? First we are going to create the consumer instance, and then we will try to connect the cluster. So to do that, here again properties we are going to need. So again properties equal to property helper dot get properties. Again it will throw some exception that needs to be handled. And finally we are going to define the try, and within the try the specific class which can help us to communicate or to connect with the Kafka cluster, that is like Kafka consumer. Here also we are going to have that try and then Kafka consumer, and we have string comma string, we can say consumer, and now new Kafka consumer, which is basically taking the properties. We will get into this block, and the second step we will try to initiate. So my second step can be that we need to subscribe the consumer with a specific topic, folks. Right? Subscribe means basically consumer says to the topic that, hey topic, I'm going to like get the information from you, and topic also have the idea that, okay, this is one of my consumer where I need to provide the data. Okay, so I will simply write like subscribe to topic. Here also we will simply go to the producer class, and whatever the topic we had already defined here, we will simply define here as well, so that we are on sync. And finally, whatever the consumer instance we have created, we just need to call out this and write subscribe, and the subscribe within that we need to say collections dot singleton and then topic. Okay, so topics are basically goes into the part of in the form of collection dot singleton. So that's the reason we are converting it, and finally subscribe with the specific topic whatever we have defined as part of the producer class. Now the next step, that is step number 3, can be like we need to poll and process the records, you can say, right? So basically poll is an type of an API as part of the Kafka. So what does it mean? Like say see producers are something which are like keep on producing the informations, right? And Kafka cluster as in consumer, the consumer has to look into the data, has to look into the updates always. So as part of the poll, we can actually define a specific timeline that, okay, at which time interval I just wanted to get the updates from my cluster. Okay, say for example, I wanted to update in the 100 millisecond, per 100 millisecond I would like to get the updates, something like that. Okay, so here we will keep on checking into the cluster that whether there is any message or not. That's the reason we will try to create an infinite while loop, and here we will try to write or implement this like we will basically implement the logic where we will try to see that whether new messages are there or not. So pull new records. So to pull the new records, there is a consumer, we need to call out consumer records. So just be make sure there is two class, one is like consumer records and consumer record. We need to initiate consumer records, and consumer records also key can be a string, value can be a string. Again we can make it as like records, and we can say that consumer dot poll, and now we need to specify the duration. So duration of milliseconds, that is like 100. We have already imported the specific this one as well, the specific consumer records class as well. Now what we will do is we will process the data. In terms of process the data means, for the time being we will just wanted to see that whatever the information that our consumer consuming, we just wanted to print it. Okay, so to do that we will take the help of a for loop, and what we will do is we will say that consumer record means only one record at a time. This is like string, and I can say each record, it should be like it should be looks into the whatever the records that we're gonna have, and whenever there is a record we will try to print this. Okay, so we will simply try to print this. So from this record we can actually print couple of things. So first of all, we can actually would like to see that through which topic our records are being consumed. So first we can just uh, print the specific topic name. Secondly, we can specifically get the specific message key. We can say that message key separately. So message key, right? Third, we can also get the value and also get the value, right? Now we can just directly say that each record dot topic, comma, each record dot key, comma, each record dot value. Okay, so our for loop is ended here, and just to be handle all the delays and all those things, we just wanted to put 1000 millisecond thread sleep over here. Okay, so this is the implementation of our consumer folks. So basically, what if I try to reiterate? So basically here we are again trying to get the property instance, whatever we have defined. Here we are basically trying to get or trying to create the instance of Kafka consumer, because this is the class which can help us to create the consumer class based on the properties that we have defined. Now here we are subscribing with the topic, the same topic whatever we have created as part of the producer. Now here simply we have written a logic which will keep on checking the record within the topic in the duration of 100 milliseconds, basically polling concept. And finally, whenever this consumer records going to have some value through the consumer, basically through the topic, we are just trying to process means we are basically trying to print the specific records, especially three type of information, that is topic, key and value on the console, right? So this is the consumer implementation. The next implementation going to be the application. So this is, say for example, this is our actual consumer. This is the end user through which the records are going to be consumed. So this is the main class we will now implementing, and finally we will execute this specific main method only in terms of testing our implementation. Okay, so now let's implement this. So as part of the main method, first we will just try to create, or we will try to store one error message. What is the purpose of the error message? We will understand. The error message, we will say that error need to define the first parameters producer or consumer. Probably I can say that you need to define. So folks, basically what exactly we are trying to do here is, so we are going to use these args, arguments string array, uh, so that we can provide one flexibility to our user who gonna use the specific or going to execute the specific application, so that they can execute and they can provide value on runtime. Okay, so basically the process is like we are going to expect one of the value, either it could be producer or consumer. So based on the user specified value, the specific method or specific code going to be executed. Okay, so first we will try to put one check that if my args dot length at least not equal to 1, because we are expecting at least one value, like one value at least should be there. If this is something happened, we are basically trying to print some error message, and error message can be the same error message whatever we have documented, and we will simply return from the specific method. We don't want user probably get into the further steps. If all args are looks fine, the length is like equal 1, then what we can do is we can create like string mode, and here basically we are trying to get the first index value of our args array, and we will trying to create one switch statement. So you will say that mode dot to lowercase local dot root. Okay, this is the two lowercase, and if we got that the value based, and now we will put the case. If my specific mode going to be like producer, then we will simply print some message on the console that starting the producer new line, and here where we have created our producer, the producer class. So we will simply say that new producer dot produce messages, and as it is throwing some exceptions, so we can also like mention as part of the throws exception. And once it is done, we will simply call the break, and next should be the next case should be for the consumer, and here also we can simply take similar kind of message on the console, just it is going to be consumer, and now it can be like new consumer dot consume message, and if this is done, then simply break the statement, and for the default case we will again say that no such parameters, or probably we can say the error message will be the same error message we can reuse like this. Okay, makes sense folks? So this is our application class which gonna help us to execute and see that how our implementation actually working. And one thing as part of the pom.xml that I have already added as part of this segment, you can see we are basically using the build plugins, and as part of the exec maven plugin that we are using. Basically what is the purpose of it, that whenever you are trying to execute any java or any java main class from maven, right, so we need to pass couple of parameters over there with the help of exec plugin. So there is a prohibition that we can actually mark the specific class name here as well. So something like word g, and then if we have example dot application, because if you see that this is our specific location, right, org dot example, and here we have one class called application which is we have just called out, so that whenever we execute or compile this maven pom.xml, we do not need to explicitly mention that where our main method is actually located. And how we can check that this class is actually being referring the same application or not, if we simply try to like control and click, so it will take you to the specific class itself. That means your class whatever wherever you have mentioned this main method, that is being mapped here successfully. All right, so next we will try to launch the terminal, whatever however we have seen as part of the local instance executing, and then from there we will see that we will trigger the maven command, and we will try to see that whether our respective implementation of Kafka and producer consumer working or not. So before going ahead with our execution, we need to start the Kafka cluster. Okay, and to in terms of starting the Kafka cluster, this time we're gonna use the Docker container for Kafka. right? So this is the project currently if you see in my GitHub repo, and this is all I have already mentioned all the required commands that you're supposed to execute in terms of like launching the Docker instance of Kafka, and also how you can exactly pass the runtime environment for the program and execute, right? So you can check out this. So what I'm gonna do is like I'm gonna take or copy this specific command to execute the Docker image of Kafka, and then we will start executing and see how producer and consumer are being working, right? So to do that, as I am working on the Windows, so I will open the Windows PowerShell. So for the time being, if I just wanted to see what are the containers are being executing, so if I can see that there is no such container or image being currently running in my system, right? If I simply close it and I just copied the specific command, whatever I have mentioned on the GitHub README file, that same thing. And if I hit the enter and just wait for some time to be executed, so you can see that my Kafka cluster is actually started. Very well. Now just minimize this. Now I would like to open my first terminal, and you can see that the path of the project is like where I have the specific project there. So I already navigated to this path. Okay. So here for our help and for our reference, we can also refer the same command here, right? This is the command that we need to execute in terms of launching our producer. Okay. So just before launching the producer, I just wanted to remind you that we are basically going to produce this kind of information. So if you close this, yeah, this kind of information like scab information. Okay. So if I go back to the terminal and try to just paste the command, whatever we have, we are basically trying to launch the producer now. You see the producer, my producer already started, and if you see that very carefully folks, so this is the information that we have actually passing, correct? If we try to match it, like my fare and the speed and the driver name and the location, so the order can be random, but if you see that the ultimate value is something that we are printing in the form of JSON, that is something producer already produced. That means if I go back and again try to launch one more new window, this is I'm considering as part of my consumer. So let it be like this. Say for example, this is my producer, resize the window, and this is my consumer. I'm resizing the window. And this time if I just paste the same command, but this time instead of producer, I will try to write consumer, what will happen? So my code started, and this time if you see my consumer is keep on running, because remember that we have actually used the while infinite loop, and each time, right, each time it is 100 millisecond it is trying to pull the records. So here if we try to see a bit more, as it is keep on pulling the record, so probably I can search here something like messages. And yes, this is the messages that we are actually getting. Is that message? Yes, this is the message, right? So topic is like capitals, we do not have any such key defined, and this is the value that currently we are getting as part of the producer, right? Yeah, this is the value. So value is like where this one, and this the location is like Karnataka, and speed is this. So this is the same information whatever we are getting from our producer, right? From whatever they're getting from the producer, the same information we are being able to consume as part of the consumer as well. Now we just implemented only one message, right? So if you want, you can actually improvise, and we can actually create many more messages like that. So moreover, if we just create some random method which can generate the random string, you can keep on passing that. Producer keep on produce that information, and what will happen, like consumer will keep on getting the information and try to print over the console. Okay. So that's all as part of the implementation of consumer and producer within Kafka cluster using Java and Kafka client library. I hope this helps to you to understand overall the Kafka implementation. And you can probably check out the GitHub page also, my GitHub project also. There I have actually segregated this entire project in couple of more application and more class has been introduced on the specific project, because this is a very basic structure that we have implemented to see how we can do that, the base level of it, but a bit more advanced level has already been implemented and hosted on the GitHub. Right? Thanks for watching.